That is enough about the soul's immortality. I must now say something about its character. It would take too long, and beyond the slightest shadow of a doubt require a god, to explain its character, but the use of analogy will make the task within lesser human powers. So let's do that. In my analogy, a soul is like an organic whole made up of a charioteer and his team of horses. Now, while the horses and charioteers of gods are always thoroughly good, those of everyone else are a mixture. Although our inner ruler drives a pair of horses, only one of his horses is thoroughly noble and good, while the other is thoroughly the opposite. This inevitably makes driving in our case difficult and disagreeable. Next, I must try to explain how one living creature is called immortal, while another is called mortal. It is the job of the soul in general to look after all that is inanimate, and souls patrol the whole universe, taking on different forms at different times. A complete soul, which is to say one that is winged, journeys on high and controls the whole world. The one that has lost its wings is carried along until it seizes upon something solid, and it takes up residence there. The earthly body of which it takes control seems to move itself, but that is the effect of the soul, and the whole unit of soul and body conjoined is called a living creature, and also mortal. No one who has thought the matter through could call a living creature immortal, but because we have never seen a god, and have an inadequate conception of godhood, we imagine a kind of immortal living creature, possessing both soul and body in an everlasting combination. Anyway, we can leave the facts of this matter to be, and be expressed however the gods like. But we have to come to some solid understanding of what causes a soul to shed and lose its wings. It is something like this. The natural property of a wing is to carry something heavy aloft, up on high to the abode of the gods. There is a sense in which, of all the things that are related to the body, wings have more of the divine in them. Anything divine is good, wise, virtuous, and so on. So these qualities are the best source of nourishment and growth for the soul's wings. But badness and evil and so on cause them to shrink and perish. The supreme leader in the heavens is Zeus. He goes at the head in a winged chariot, arranging and managing everything. And behind him comes the host of gods and spirits, in an orderly array of 11 squadrons. For Hestia stays alone in the god's house, while each of the other gods who have been assigned one of the 12 positions takes his place at the head of the rank to which he has been assigned. So there are many glorious sights to be seen within heaven, and many wonderful paths along which the favored company of gods go and return, each performing his proper function, and the gods are accompanied by everyone who wants to join them, and is capable of doing so, because meanness has no place in the gods' choir. When they turn to food and go to one of their banquets, they journey skyward to the rim of the heavenly vault. Although the way is steep, the gods' chariots make light of the journey, since they are well balanced and easy to handle. But the other chariots find it hard, because the troublesome horse weighs them down. Any charioteer who has trained his horse imperfectly finds that it pulls him down towards the earth, and holds him back. And this is the point which the soul faces the worst suffering and the hardest struggle. When the souls we call immortal reach the rim, they make their way to the outside and stand on the outer edge of heaven. And as they stand there, the revolution carries them around, while they gaze outward from the heaven. The region beyond heaven has never yet been adequately described in any of our earthly poets' compositions, nor will it ever be. But since one has to make a courageous attempt to speak the truth, especially when it is truth that one is speaking about, here is a description. This region is filled with true being. True being has no color or form. It is intangible, and visible only to intelligence, the soul's guide. True being is the province of everything that counts as true knowledge. So since the mind of God is nourished by intelligence and pure knowledge, as is the mind of every soul which is concerned to receive its proper food, it is pleased to be at last in a position to see true being, and in gazing on the truth it is fed and feels comfortable, until the revolution carries it around to the same place again. In the course of its circuit it observes justice as it really is, self-control, knowledge, not the kind of knowledge that is involved with change and differs according to which of the various existing things it makes its object, but the kind of knowledge whose object is things as they really are. And once it has feasted its gaze in the same way on everything else that really is, it sinks back into the inside of heaven and returns home. Once back home, the soul's charioteer reins in his horses by their manger, throws them ambrosia to eat, and gives them nectar to wash down. This is how the gods live. As for the other souls, any that have closely followed a god, and have come to resemble him most, raise the heads of their charioteers into the region outside, and are carried around along with the revolution. They are disturbed by their horses, and their view of things as they really are is uncertain. Others poke their heads through from time to time, but sink back down in between, and so they see some things, but miss others, depending on the resistance offered by their horses. The rest all long for the upper region and follow after. They cannot break through. They are carried around under the surface, trampling and bumping onto one another as one tries to overtake another. So there is utter chaos, nothing but sweat and conflict. In the course of this confusion, many souls are crippled as a result of the incompetence of the charioteers, and many have their wings severely damaged. But even after all this effort, none of them succeeds in seeing things as they really are before having to return and rely on specious nourishment. The reason why there is so much determination to see the whereabouts of the plane of truth is not only that the proper food for the best part of the soul happens to come from the meadow there, but also that it is in the nature of the wings which raise the soul to be nourished by this region. It is the decree of destiny that any soul which attends a god, and catches even a glimpse of the truth, remains free from injury until the next revolution. And if it is able to do this every time, it will continue to be free from harm. But souls which fall behind and lose their vision of the truth, and are for some unfortunate reason or another weighed down by being filled with forgetfulness and weakness, lose their wings thanks to this burden and fall to earth. At this point they are subject to a law that they are not to be planted into the bodies of animals in their first incarnation. The souls which have seen the most are to enter the seeds of men who will become philosophers, lovers of beauty, men of culture, men who are dedicated to love. The second group, those of law-abiding kings or military commanders or civic leaders. The third group, those of politicians, estate managers, or businessmen. The fourth group, those of men who love exercising in a gymnasium, or future experts in bodily health. The fifth group will live as prophets, or as initiators into one of the mystery cults. The sixth group will most suitably live as poets, or some other kind of representative artist. The seventh as artisans or farmers. The eighth as sophists or demagogues. And the ninth as tyrants. In all these cases, anyone who has lived a moral life will obtain a better fate, and anyone who has lived an immoral life the opposite. For no soul returns to the place it fell from for 10,000 years. It takes that long for wings to grow, except the soul of a man who has practiced philosophy with sincerity, or combined his love with nurturing the well-being of a youth, with the practice of philosophy. At the 3,000-year circuit, if these souls have chosen the philosophical life 3 times in succession, they regain their wings, and in the 3,000th year they return. But all the other souls are judged after the end of their first life, and once they have been judged, they either go to prisons in the underworld, where they are punished, or are raised aloft by justice to a certain place in the heavens, and live as they deserve, depending on how they lived when they were in human form. But in the 1,000th year, both groups of souls come for the allotment and choice of their second life, and each of them chooses the life it likes. This is the point at which human soul can be reincarnated as an animal, and someone who was formerly human can be reborn as a human being once again, instead of being an animal. For a soul which has never seen the truth cannot enter into human form, because a man must understand the impressions he receives by reference to classes. He draws on the plurality of perceptions to combine them by reasoning into a single class. This is recollection of the things which our souls once saw during their journey as companions to a god, when they saw beyond the things we now say exist, and poked their heads up into true reality. That is why only the mind of a philosopher deserves to grow wings, because it uses memory to remain always as close as possible to those things near to which gives a god his divine qualities. By making correct use of reminders of these things, a man, being constantly initiated into the most perfect rights of all, becomes the only one who is truly perfect. But since he is remote from human concerns and close to divinity, he is criticized by the general run of humankind as deranged, because they do not realize that he is possessed by a god. Now we reach the point to which the whole discussion of the fourth kind of madness was tending. This fourth kind of madness is the kind which occurs when someone sees beauty here on earth and is reminded of true beauty. His wings begin to grow, and he wants to take to the ear on his new plumage, but he cannot. Like a bird, he looks upwards, and because he ignores what is down here, he is accused of behaving like a madman. So the point is that this turns out to be the most thoroughly good of all kinds of possession, not only for the man who is possessed, but also for anyone who is touched by it. And the word lover refers to a lover of beauty who has been possessed by this kind of madness. For, as I have already said, the soul of every human being is bound to have seen things as they really are, or else it would not have entered this kind of living creature. But not every soul is readily prompted by things here on earth to recall those things that are real. This is not easy for souls which caught only a brief glimpse of things there, nor for those which, after falling to earth, have suffered the misfortune of being perverted, made immoral by the company they keep, and have forgotten the sacred things they saw then. When the remaining few, whose memories are good enough, see a likeness here which reminds them of things there, they are amazed and beside themselves. But they do not understand what is happening to them because of a certain unclarity in their perceptions. But although the likeness here on earth lack all luster, and only a few people come to them and barely see, through dim sense organs, what it is that any likeness is a likeness of, yet earlier it was possible for them to see beauty in all its brilliance. That was then. We as attendants of Zeus and others of one of the other gods, as part of a happy company, they saw a wonderful sight and spectacle, and were initiated into what we may rightly call the most wonderful of the mysteries. When we celebrated these mysteries then, we were not only perfect beings ourselves, untouched by all the troubles which awaited us later, but we also were initiated into and contemplated things shown to us that were perfect, simple, stable, and blissful. We were surrounded by rays of pure light, being pure ourselves and untainted by this object we call a body, and which we carry around with us now, imprisoned like some shellfish. Let this be my tribute to memory. It was remembering and longing for those past events which has made me go on rather too long now. But turning to beauty, it shone out, as I said, among its companions there, and once here on earth we found, by means of clearest of our senses, that it sparkles with particular clarity. For the keenest kind of perception the body affords us is the one that comes through seeing, though we are not able to see wisdom, because, as with everything else which is an object of love, wisdom would cause terrible pangs of love in us if it presented some kind of clear image of itself by approaching our organ of sight. But as things are, It is only beauty which has the property of being especially visible and especially lovable. Anyone who was initiated long ago, or has been corrupted, is not given to moving rapidly from here to there, towards beauty as it really is. Instead, he gazes on its namesake here on earth, and the outcome is that the sight does not arouse reverence in him. No, he surrenders to pleasure, and tries, like an animal, to mount his partner and to father offspring. And having become habituated to excess, he is not afraid or ashamed to pursue unnatural pleasures. But when someone who has only recently been initiated, and it took him plenty of the sights to be seen then, sees a marvelous face, or a bodily form which is a good reflection of beauty, at first he shivers, and is gripped by something like the fear he felt then, and the sight also moves him to revere his beloved as if he were a god. In fact, it is only concern about being thought completely insane that stops him from sacrificing to his beloved as if he were a cult statue or a god. Following this sight, the kind of change comes over him that you would expect after a shivering fit, and he begins to sweat and to run an unusually high fever, because the reception through his eyes of the effusion of beauty causes him to get hot. Now, this effusion is also the natural means of irrigating his wings. His heat softens the coat covering the feather's buds, which had been too hard and closed up for wings to grow. As further nourishment pours in, the quills of the feathers swell and begin to grow from the roots upwards and to spread all over the underside of the soul, because previously the whole soul was winged. At this point, then, his whole soul seethes and pounds. In fact, the soul of someone who is beginning to grow wings experiences exactly the same sensation as children feel when they are teething, with their teeth just starting to grow, and they feel an itching and a soreness in their gums. So the soul, as it grows its wings, seethes and feels sore and tingles.